Hello, welcome to the marketplace. Coming up this afternoon, Bank of Ghana rules out reviewing cash reserve requirement for banks as some financial institutions move to place new charges on foreign currency accounts. Also coming up, Cocoa Board optimistic of achieving target for the next crop season as government readies to officially open market.
The announcement of price in cocoa for Ghana doesn't go way far from what is announced in Cote d'Ivoire. We try to bridge the differential.
Also, total crude oil production from the country's fields in 2022 pegged at 55 million barrels, according to Transparency Initiative report. My name is Darryl Kwao. Thanks for being with us. Details coming up. Welcome to the marketplace. First up, the Bank of Ghana has ruled out an immediate review of the cash reserve requirement for commercial banks. The push for a change in the monetary measure follows decision by some banks to place fresh charges on foreign currency accounts. There's more in this report.
The Bank of Ghana argues that the increase in the cash reserve requirement should be seen as a measure to correct a challenge in the financial space and the economy. This should help in stabilizing the Ghana cedi as well as check inflation, which had been on the increase since last year. Therefore, the central bank maintains that it might not be prudent to reverse the increase in the cash reserve requirement for commercial banks. The regulator has again told Joy Business that the action has helped in controlling inflation and the cedi's recent stability against the dollar. It has, however, argued that it is still monitoring developments on the market in terms of the next line of action. The central bank earlier this year adjusted the cash reserve requirement, a move that increased the amount of cedi cover that commercial banks have to provide for every foreign currency that they are holding. This has increased the cost of keeping these accounts. The development has also forced some of the commercial banks to charge depositors as much as $30 for operating these accounts as maintenance fee every month.
Our financial analyst, Dr. Wisdom Dogbe, joins us on Zoom to discuss this and other matters. Good afternoon, morning in the U.S. Your thoughts on this situation with the banks reintroducing charges on forex accounts to make up for rising costs and the central bank ruling out immediate review of the cash reserve requirement for commercial banks?
Thank you, Darryl, for having me again. So I think that the thing is that central banks globally will increase their cash reserve requirements for commercial banks in a bid to enhance financial stability of these banks to better withstand financial shocks and reduce the risk of bank failures in a recession like what Ghana has been dealing with. And so they do this as a liquidity buffer to provide a cushion against unexpected withdrawals by the depositors, which could also enhance overall liquidity in the banking system. The challenge with that is it can, at the same time, increase the operational costs for the banks, as we're seeing in this case, which is worsened by the depreciation of the cedi. Now, the banks have to deal with higher operational costs also associated with managing higher reserves, which can lead to increased fees for consumers or reduced profitability. And you see, the higher operational cost is passed on to the bank customers because the commercial banks are now required to hold higher reserves, so the amount of money available to lend reduces. And the less money they can give out to borrowers, the lower interest income the banks receives. So they can't afford to bear these additional costs, which is why they pass it on to the customers.
Right. We want to move on and talk about policy rate issues, because in the U.S. where you are, the U.S. Federal Reserve is looking to cut rates. I want to first ask you why it is doing so, then we'll talk about the trickle-down effects.
Sure. I think that for the most part of the year, right, the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, he mentioned that there were two scenarios that could cause the Fed to cut rates. One of those scenarios is a weakening job market, and the other is if inflation starts to cool a bit, enough to impact the economy. Here in the U.S., both of those conditions seem like what is beginning to unfold. So it makes sense for the Fed to cut rates to stave off any adverse slowdown of the economy. If I recall, Daryl, unemployment rate in the U.S. rose in July to 4.3%, which was the highest since October 2021. But it improved in August to 4.2%. At that time, though, investors were responding to weaker job market because they thought the Fed made a mistake by holding rates steady. That is the reason why we saw the S&P 500 and also the NASDAQ drop 2% and 3% respectively. But yeah, this across the board weakness in the job market, together with cooling inflation, is what is fueling the view that the Fed will ease monetary policy very, very shortly.
Yeah, and so what's the impact locally, especially on the city's performance?
Here's the thing, right? The rate cut will have broad implications and not just on the foreign exchange market. There is the general impact of economic growth. First, there is the stimulus effect in the sense that such a rate cut can stimulate global economic growth by encouraging borrowing and spending, both in the U.S. and abroad. And then if you think about the contagion effect, I would say that economic growth in the U.S. would almost likely lead to increased demand for for imports from other countries. So those countries or economies are likely going to see expansion as well. Then there is the likelihood of a global monetary policy response from the various central banks across the globe. They may likely respond to a U.S. rate cut by adjusting their own policy rates to keep a competitive positioning, which I strongly believe can lead to a global monetary easing cycle. But to answer your question specifically about the impact locally, I would say that a reduction in the U.S. policy rate normally will lead to lower interest rate for savings and investment in the U.S. And that is likely to make the U.S. dollar less attractive to foreign investors. And so it can lead to depreciation of the dollar against other currencies, which can be a great news for the city in this case. And then there is also a direct impact to exchange rates in the sense that forex markets usually react pretty quickly to announcement of a policy rate cut. And what happens is that traders may sell the dollar quickly, in anticipation of a lower yield, which can cause immediate fluctuation in the exchange rates. And we may see an increase in market volatility as well, Daryl, as investors adjust their positions based on the expectations that the economic conditions are going to change and interest rate is also going to reduce.
Well, while we talk about the U.S. Fed looking into cutting our rates, we're not too sure what the Bank of Ghana will do in September. In fact, the Institute of Economic Affairs saying that it does not think that the government is likely to drop the policy rate by more than 100 basis points, despite significant drop in inflation and signals that the U.S. Fed is going to cut rates as well. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Darren, I think the Institute of Economic Affairs, they also questioned the effectiveness of the Bank of Ghana's policy rate. I read somewhere that they don't believe our policy rate has been effective in managing inflation. And I tend to agree because, look, Ghana's inflation rate dropped from the mid 50% in 2022 to the current rate of around 21%. But from that time till now, the policy rate only declined by about 100 basis points over the same period. So you tend to wonder if Ghana's policy rate is set to target inflation or not. But what I can say is that we can take a cue or two from the potential U.S. rate cut, which is expected to drive up economic activity. I believe same can be true for Ghana as well. And I hope that the Monetary Policy Committee, they will make a decision to cut rates more significantly this time around. It just might be a better response to the current macroeconomic conditions in Ghana.
Isn't the case that they're just being careful?
They are being careful, right? But the macroeconomic conditions don't support a higher policy rate at this time. I don't believe so.
All right. And so what happens if we don't see a drastic drop in the policy rate in September? What are the implications?
Dara, with everything we are seeing currently in the U.S. economy, okay, especially when it comes to unemployment rates and inflation, it seems to me that we could see a rather significant rate cut by the Fed. I have spoken with a handful of corporate executives and also decision makers, and all of them tell me that they are waiting for a rate cut to spend, to hire new talents and also invest more in their businesses. If we don't see a significant rate cut in September, it will have direct and immediate impact on economic activity. Growth will be much more slower, in my opinion, because the cost of borrowing will remain pretty high for consumers and businesses, and this can adversely impact consumer spending and business investment. And I believe also that global financial markets are all in anticipation of U.S. rate cuts, and if that delays, equity markets may react negatively because, as you know, investors usually prefer lower rates that stimulate economic activity and improve corporate profitability. So that could lead to increased volatility in the stock market.
All right. Thanks for joining us with your perspective, Dr. Wisdom Dogwe there from the U.S. As we continue to look forward to what the U.S. Fed will do and what the implications will be for the local market. I appreciate your time with us this afternoon on the marketplace. Now, the total production of crude oil in 2022 is pegged at 55 million barrels. This was after the Ghana Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative carried out an audit of production volumes as captured in its 2021-2022 report. James Ishen has more.
The report revealed that in 2021, Jubilee Field produced 27 million barrels of crude compared with a 2020 output of 30 million. According to the Ghana Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, the Jubilee Fields continue to contribute to about half the total national output, even though production reduced slightly by 10%. In 2022, Jubilee Field contributed half of the total output, showing a production increase of 11.5% from the 2021 output. The highest monthly production volume on the Jubilee Field was recorded in March and the lowest in May. There was, however, a 33% and 28% in the Chinebo and Nyira and Tome fields in 2021 and 2022. This was attributed to poor reservoir performance. However, production at the Jinyame Sankofa project saw some improvement in 2020, but declined again in 2021, which was linked to the emergency shutdown. Recommendations from the report indicated that government should invest in data collection to help deal with the challenge facing the country's oil fields.
From oil to cocoa, Cocoa Board says it is hopeful of achieving its production target of 650,000 metric tons in the 2024-2025 crop season, which will be launched very soon. Now, Cocoa Board says it reviewed its production target and down by 19.8% due to the drought experience this year. Speaking earlier at a press conference, Chief Executive Joseph Boyne-Edu said Ghana is collaborating with Ivory Coast to announce the farm gate price simultaneously to discourage smuggling of the beans across the borders.
For announcement, we have to harmonize, our price differentials to ensure that there is no huge gap. When I say gap here, is about official gap in the official pricing of cocoa. So if you've watched the announcement of price in cocoa for Ghana doesn't go way, far from what is announced in Cote d'Ivoire. We try to bridge the differential between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. Whatever difference that you see being huge are not the official, prices. These are coming from the black market. And often it's not even Cote d'Ivoire. It may be from Guinea-Bissau and then Burkina. There's a lot of smuggling from Cote d'Ivoire to Guinea-Bissau and then Burkina. And then from Ghana through Cote d'Ivoire to these two countries. This is what is happening. So apart from harmonization of our market systems and then pricing, trying to bridge the smuggling gap, we've also come out the living income differential. And it came at it was timeless because that was a time when price had completely collapsed. But additional $400, actually cushioned us to stay above water. If that hadn't come, we would have sunk, and there wouldn't have been any industry at all in Ghana. because farmers would have lost hope. But the $400 came to cushion us. The same way took place in Cote d'Ivoire. Because for every cocoa they were selling, they were getting extra $400. And to us, to the two countries, these things have been very beneficial. Now, we also have a common stand on matters.
All right, the cocoa sector will be a topic for the exchange later in the program. Do hang around for that. But Ghana and two other African countries account for more than half of trade within the region. That's according to the new World Trade Organization report. There's more in this report.
On the back of a recent report released by the World Trade Organization in 2023, which showed that Ghana accounted for more than 5% of trade within the region, and this is the highest among countries on the continent. However, in the 2024 report, which tracked developments in 2022, it showed that when it comes to trade done through the various digital platforms, Ghana, Morocco, and South Africa were the dominant players. The report showed that Ghana and these countries command the space since 2015 and has seen some significant growth over the years. Another interesting development is that Ghana and these other countries' growth even surpassed the global average.
All right, thanks for staying with us on the marketplace. Next to the exchange, join us on Zoom, Obed Osu-Adai, co-coordinator, Ghana Civil Society Cocoa Platform, as we anticipate the announcement of cocoa farm gate prices to begin a new crop season. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Cocoa Board hopeful of achieving a target of 650,000 metric tons for the 2024-2025 crop season. It has had to review production downwards by 19.8% due to the drought. What do you make of the target?
Well, thank you very much for having me. And yes, we anticipated that there was no way Ghana was going to be able to meet the projection that we made for the 2023-2024 cocoa season. We are not surprised because of within the season there were several factors that affected production. So if you ask me whether we are surprised, we are not surprised. Whether or not the new targets augurs well for the cocoa sector, obviously not. But we are hoping that in the coming season, Cocoa Board and farmers will put their house in order, and then we can be able to meet the projection that we will make.
Sometime last week, you held a press conference where you raised concern about our cocoa production. You indicated that we're going to see our lowest output in a decade in the upcoming season. You're blaming it on illegal mining. And then, I mean, we had the Cocoa Board CEO talk about the drought situation as well. Those are two big problems.
Yes. So our inability to meet our target is because of several reasons. And you have just mentioned two, which is the illegal mining or the galamsey, and then, of course, the weather, the drought, and in some cases, drought and others, excessive rainfall. But there are others. There is also the diseased farms, the CS-D farms. And when you go to the western and western north, there are some areas that are experiencing a lot of swollen shoot disease, and their farms are not productive. When you go also to western north, there are farms that have been attacked by the black pod disease. So all these factors are contributing to our abysmal production. And as a matter of fact, it's not a decade, it's actually 2 decades. The last time we had such terrible harvest was in the 2002-2003 cocoa season, when we had around 493,000 metric tons. And this year, or this season, the 2024-2025, we are projecting to have less than 500,000. So yes, these factors are contributing, but maybe the solutions to these factors probably we'll discuss later. But whilst we wait to discuss, we are thinking that one of the most effective way to increase production, aside and the productivity enhancement programs, is to motivate cocoa farmers not to give their lands to these galamseyers, not to smuggle cocoa. And one of the most important incentives is to increase the farm gate price to a level that is competitive within the sub-region.
Well, you're in the Ashanti region. We're expecting that announcement to be made today, but it doesn't appear it will be made today. Talk to us about how important the farm gate prices are for the farmers to sustain their interest in cocoa production. And what would you suggest to be the ideal price?
Well, just as we stated in our press statement last week, we have looked at the numbers. We know the cocoa board is in a very difficult position. Actually, we don't envy them at all because we are seeing our production levels go down while the price is going up. And they have been running at a loss for several years, and this would have been the appropriate season to make up for some of the lost revenues. But unfortunately, farmers are also demanding higher prices, not because we just want to demand, but we are looking at our neighbors. When you go to Togo right now, Togo is paying not less than 7,000 per bag, 7,000 Ghana cedis per bag. When you go to Nigeria, you go to Cameroon, you go to Madagascar, they are all paying not less than 8,000 Ghana cedis for a bag of cocoa. But we know that our situation is different from that of those African countries because in our case, cocoa board supports us with certain services that we are required to pay for. And so we understand. But looking at the numbers, we think that the worst, and please listen to my words very carefully, the worst that we are expecting from cocoa board will be 3,500. They can do better. We can go up to 4,000, 5,000, but the worst we are expecting is 3,500. If the government doesn't announce that.
Okay, appears Obed is frozen there. I don't know if we can have him back, but we are discussing
what we intend to do.
All right, Obed, quick one before you go, because we are just about losing you. So the cocoa board says it's collaborating with Ivory Coast to announce the prices. What difference would it make, really?
Well, in times past, it would have made a lot of difference because the most active corridor for cocoa smuggling was the Western Corridor. So between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, that was where a lot of our cocoa was being smuggled because of price differences. But now, my brother, the hotspot is not in the Western Corridor anymore. It's rather in the Eastern Corridor, where in the Oti and Volta region, the farmers smuggled more than 80% of the produce that they did for the 2023-2024 season were smuggled to Togo. And so, yes,
because of the prices
they might
there.
be putting measures. Sorry?
No, I was just saying because
Hello?
Togo is offering much more in terms of pricing.
Hello? Yes. So yes, the pricing on the Western Corridor will, I mean, if we engage with Cocoa Board and the CCC, which is in the Ivory Coast, to set the price at a level that will not be attractive for cross-border smuggling, that would be very good. But if we are using that as the logic, then Cocoa Board should also be looking at our Eastern Corridor and also look at the price in Togo and also make it more competitive in such a way that Oti region and the Volta region will not also be exporting or smuggling their beans to Togo. So yes, working with Cote d'Ivoire is great, but the problem is moving from the Western Corridor when it comes to smuggling to the Eastern Corridor. So Cocoa Board also need to put measures in place to address that problem.
All right, I'm going to risk this and ask you the solutions going forward. What should be done?
Okay. Well, there are several solutions. So for one, when it comes to illegal mining, there needs to be a more serious approach from government towards illegal mining. This Operation Galam Stop, that goes on for about 6 months and it stops. It's not working. We have seen it not working. So they need to come out with a more pragmatic and solution-oriented kind of strategy. On the issue of the disease farms, we know Cocoa Board has started rehabilitation of the farms. The problem is that some of the farms that were rehabilitated about 2 years ago have been left to the mercy of the weather. Nobody is taking care of it. They've just left the farms there and there are no weeding around them. So you can't just plant cocoa and leave it in the wilderness. It will die off. So if Cocoa Board is serious about rehabilitating the disease farms, they need to go to the ground, get the workers to weed around these planted cocoa seedlings, or else our production will still come down. Then on the issue of the price, the pricing needs to be competitive. Cocoa Board needs to come up with strategies to make the best out of the market. The problem for Ghana has been that our marketing strategy has been mostly forward sales. and we are not making enough good use of the spot sales. Currently, the price on the market is around 9,000 US dollars per ton. But Ghana sold most of our 2024-2025 season in the past season or in the past years. That means that the price we got there will be different from the spot price right now, and it might not have been competitive enough to pay the farmer the required price for their beans. So it is a multifaceted strategy that Cocoa Board needs to come up with. They can't be holding just news conferences and issuing statements and expect that the solution will just come out from the sky. They need to engage stakeholders, especially the farmers, and then the LPCs, the private sector, civil society, and have a concerted conversation to bring up a strategy that is forward-looking. This is not politics. This is not about NDC and NPP, but it's about the sector. The earlier we absorb the cocoa sector of politics, that will be very useful for all of us. Then the last point is that Cocoa Board's overhead expenditure is so much, and the amount of money that they spend in running Cocoa Board as an entity also contributes to the debt that they are incurring. If they want to be very, very self-sufficient, and now this season they want to raise funds internally, one of the things they could do will also be to minimize their overhead costs and administrative costs by reducing the number of staff that they have and cutting down on those big bonuses that they pay to their staff.
We hear you. Obed Owusu-Adai, co-coordinator, Ghana Civil Society Cocoa Platform. We are looking forward to the announcement by Cocoa Board. I'm sure you are in anticipation as well, just as the cocoa farmers. I appreciate your time with us here on the marketplace. And that's our bulletin this afternoon. Thanks for watching, everyone. There is more news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. The day's latest stories from over there. My name is Daryl Kwao. Thanks for watching. We will be back same time tomorrow.